All right. Last episode I was talking about habits, and I thought that I should add something more because it's very easy to pontificate that one must have good habits and so on, but it's not very, I know, easy to really understand what they are and how you can do your best with regard to habits. Uh, Today I won't be speculating much on about good and bad habits, but the control of habits. And when we refer to control of anything, we come down very heavy on attention, because habits essentially kind of are an interplay between attention and executive control. This is where most people they get it wrong. I mean, it's quite easy to get into some kind of good habits by repeated practice, but it's extremely difficult to really keep a control on them, because both good and bad habits have a thin gray line. It's not really very difficult to understand what I am saying. Take for example, you have a good habit of meditating. That's fine. But if you start meditating in a crowded train just because you cannot stop it, that's ridiculous. I mean, you would not only disturb people that are around you, it becomes obvious to people that you simply cannot stop anything even if it is good. So I would like to, speak something on the control of habits. So the first point, there are several points. I'm walking in one of the most beautiful roads of the University of Hyderabad, and I just came out because it's a bright sunny day after many days of rains, and it makes sense to walk. And there is no one, absolutely no one. Although the road is good, you have a very noisy highway alongside, so we have to manage with that. I'm not using any one of those microphones, whatever it is. I hope that you would be able to hear whatever I'm saying. I trust iPhone 11. Let's see. So the first point is that anything that you make into a habit, it becomes unconscious, which means you no longer remain sensitive to the action sequences. They become repetitive and they kind of become unconscious, which means you really have no sensation left when you get into that habitual mode. For example, pianists and musicians and artists and runners, me to an extent, whenever I get into my usual habits of writing or doing stuff, I really am not sensitive. I really don't think a lot. I mean, the question then becomes, am I taking any pleasure? Because if I'm not sensitive, then my pleasure, my subjective feelings are also gone with it. That's the tricky part. So the first point is that you have to be careful that if you make anything a very serious habit, your brain no longer becomes remains sensitive to it. You lose sensation. That's good or bad, I really can't say. A lot of people are at it, trying to understand it. So there is overgrowth everywhere, greenery, rains. So you no longer are sensitive. And by not being sensitive, I'm not saying that you don't have any feeling. You still know something about it. You feel good if you write or do your habitual stuff. But you are not anymore planning. You are not, feeling that thrill whenever you acquired it first. So that is the difference. In the first acquisition, when novices acquire habits, they are very full of thrills. Like I was when I picked up photography like 5 months ago. But now it's habitual. But now I am more technical. I am sensitive to the techniques rather than the thrill of it. So that is this difference when something becomes a habit. So this point has to be kept in mind, that it's still important to make something a habit and still remain sensitive. And your brain allows you to do that. But I really don't have anything solid to tell you on that point now, because researchers are still trying to understand this particular question. So consciousness, although is a very loaded term, often is used with regard to the sensitivity issue, because subjective feelings are conscious feelings, and if you are doing something mechanically and you are no longer sensitive to it, I mean, although you know what you are doing, but I am referring to the perceptual sensations, the subjective feelings associated with it. It becomes quite mechanical. So a word like flow is often used to refer to this situation, that somebody is in a flow when somebody is doing a very habitual action and is no longer aware of what he is doing. But I don't agree with that. I think that he is perfectly aware where it is the end goal of it, but he is not feeling the novice's thrill. That's the point. The second important point is habits require attention, and non-habitual actions don't require much attention. So you require a lot of attention to non-habitual planned things, but you don't require much of attention. So why attention becomes an important thing here? Because attention is a limited resource. If any one of you would like to know more, I had a long video on attention. You can check. So when you make something habitual, the attention resource basically is not used anymore, and it's used for planning and executing new things, or maybe learning new things. So it's very important to keep that in mind. Therefore, we should make many things habitual so that our attention, being limited, kind of is preserved for acquiring new things. Imagine somebody who has a lot of things habitual, who can pick up new things because he has a lot of fuel, a lot of attentional resource. But somebody who is not really proficient in many things, whatever he does, so he really has all the attention spill over in all these activities. And that's probably is the difference between experts and novices, or proficient people and novices, because the novice is still kind of struggling with attentional resource, because nothing is habitual for him. So everything requires attention, everything requires planning, everything requires, and he has thrill in everything as long as he does them. But for the expert, he has made many things habitual, and therefore whatever new he wants to accommodate, he can pay attention to that. Well, it's an interesting question. Is it so that people of habits can learn new things faster because they have a lot of attentional reserves left, as opposed to novices? Again, I don't have a foolproof answer, and if I learn anything, I would share. As of now, we need to understand that habitual and non-habitual actions require different kinds of attention. It would be absurd to say that habitual actions don't require any attention, but that don't require to the extent that new activities require. That's the point. The role of executive control is very important, because executive control allows you to have this fine balance between habitual and non-habitual actions. Now let's take an example. Suppose I am habituated of playing guitar, and then something comes up. I'm in a cafe, or I'm playing guitar habitually, completely unaware, and something comes up. I must be flexible enough to shift from guitar playing to something else. So attentional shifting is very necessary, even if you are proficient and you are habitual. And if you cannot do that, then it would be really absurd. So then it is important to know this fine gray line between bad habits and good habits. Therefore, it is important, while you are trying to learn new habits, it is important to train your executive control system so that you remain flexible. You can shift between habits and new projects or new actions. Those who lack this flexibility, they really suffer. In a lot of diseases we see, like bipolar, borderline personality disorder, autism, we see exactly this. They have habits, but what is problematic with them is that they really can't shift from one to another. So action shifting is very important for cognition, and we technically call it cognitive flexibility. And cognitive flexibility is a key component of executive control system, the overall control system of your brain that allows you to do and jump from one action to another flawlessly. Therefore, it's not really important to get into new habits and kind of not really know what to do with them later. But if you really are trying to do a lot of things well, you need to have flexibility. So I think training executive control, particularly attention shifting, will help in this fine balance between habits and new sequences. And that becomes an important research question. Because so far we know a lot about habits. All psychologists, all these books I was talking about last episode, but they're all, pontificating about having good habits. But they don't tell you how you can have control and shift between A to B. Because without that shifting, it would be totally an impairment more than a virtue. Yeah, these trees, they have overgrown so much, and and nobody comes here anymore. Maybe I see one or two people. The interesting thing about this lockdown in the university particularly is that I see most of India is pretty open, but university teachers and students still, are enjoying the lockdown periods. And I think by next month, with lockdown on lock 4, very interesting terminology, we probably, or some of us, will return. But I don't really find it this big difference. I have been okay with so-called working from home. I think it's okay. But coming down over here for a few hours will still be fine. I don't particularly, feel the difference. Of course, the laboratories and etc. are here. They're not in my home. So I need to come down over here to collect some data, PhD students too. Those who are particularly doing science. Those who are in arts and humanities and other fields, they can still, do their library work online. An interesting question is whether really good and bad habits are really that different. I don't think so. From the brain's point of view, that's just philosophizing about it. Really, there is no big difference, because chunks of sequences of good habits are reflected in somebody's bad habits. Because in criminals, hardened criminals, they do even certain things good. They have good habits and they have bad habits. So I think the good and bad difference is merely from the talking point of view, but it really doesn't make sense if you are looking at the brain. So what is important? Well, the question is how you get rid of bad habits. You can get rid of bad habits by replacing them with good. But remember that the sequences are the same. Many chunks are the same. So they are not going to leave you because they're fundamental to your brain's understanding of habits. So what you need to probably tease out is the bad elements of it, and keeping essentially the mechanics the same. So to me, good and bad habits of any individual, because they are coming from the same brain structure, are not that different. On the surface, they may look that different, because therefore it's quite possible that some people are methodologically good and they too are methodologically bad. So there is a madness in the methods in which they have their good and bad habits. It's not in black and white. It's just, it looks like that. So good and bad habits are essentially the same, except that they lead to different consequences. Yeah, here's the point. For good habits, the consequences are good. For bad habits, many times we know the consequences are bad, but we still keep doing them, and they're unstoppable. You require executive control. I did an episode on cognitive dissonance. I think bad habits are under the grip of cognitive dissonance a lot. That's why people just keep performing them, even though when they know that they're bad. As regard to good habits, they anyway don't lead to bad consequences, and they're linked to the rewards that you have consistently got. So there is no problem with them. But with bad habits, you also have been getting rewards with bad habits. That's why you keep doing them. But if you really are not careful, then that's the way you spend all your life, performing bad habits with whatever rewards you have been getting without really thinking fresh. So replacing bad habits with good habits is not a black and white choice. You need to find the mechanics that has been governing your life ever since. You need to see very carefully what are the fundamental strategies that you use. What do you call good habits and what do you call bad habits? If there is any difference at all. But to my mind, the differences will not be that much. That's why it's ridiculous to tell somebody that get rid of all your bad habits, because she has no understanding of the mechanics, why it is to be called bad. Because we are only focusing on the outcome of it. Like smoking is dangerous to health, it leads to cancer. Thus the cancer is the outcome of it. But the pleasure principle that it derives by smoking is essentially the same that it derives by painting or jogging or doing anything. So unless until that is modulated, it's not very easy to get rid of bad habits. Will habits take away the thrills from your life if you become insensitive to whatever is habitual? I think no. If that would have been the case, then many writers would not feel happy when they write habitually. Many painters would not. and runners would not. It's just public imagination that they would enjoy. They keep doing it precisely because they enjoy. Otherwise, they would not do it. Even with regard to bad habits, those who are habitual in performing bad habits, that they know that, but they enjoy it. That's why they do it. So it's not insensitivity to the extent that you don't enjoy at all. I think it is the the creative newness, performing the same thing every day. That is something new still, and that is little bit to find out every other day. That is important. And improvisations, particularly for musicians. So habitually they perform certain things, and that leads to some new insight. So I think we cannot rule out the possibility of new insights emerging even while we perform habits. So I don't think that it is it's easy to just say that habits make you insensitive. That would have been the case then, since most of us have habit, even animals, they will not do anything new. But mind's whole purpose is to find out newness, find out thrill, find out and explore. So habits become the tools, I would say, so that little exploration becomes easy because you have more attention for them. So if you have habits, you have mastered them, then probably when the newness emerges or it gives you an opportunity, it makes you feel more comfortable to approach it because you have more energy for it. Because remember that the mental resources are pretty limited, just like physical resources. So that's the point about it. There's no such thing like extreme insensitivity. Of course, there are some examples, for example, like meditation research. In meditation research, there are some papers that say that meditators become insensitive to everything around them. And that's pretty dangerous. There is no point of doing that kind of meditation that makes you so much insensitive that you remember you kind of no more a part of the society, or you don't feel like interacting with anybody else because you have become insensitive to emotions. So it's a very important question, and it's not often gets addressed whether extreme practice like meditation makes you insensitive. If that is so, then it is bad. Obviously, it is bad. Because as human beings, we have to live in a social network. We cannot, remain isolated and become insensitive. It's very interesting to explore that point, how they maintain sensitivity while still they practice mind control. So watch out if you are training on something serious and you think that it has become a habit, how much of sensitivity is still left. You can kind of subjectively evaluate that. You don't have to do an experiment for that. But you can subjectively keep track of it. And when it kind of crosses a threshold, watch out. Maybe it's time to stop and look around. Because primarily we must not do anything that we don't find enjoying and which eventually, indirectly becomes hazardous or problematic, either for one individual or for a group of people, or whatever it is. Interesting canopy of lights. I can't do anything about the street noise. That shows that Hyderabad is fully active now. I am the only one who is enjoying a lockdown, walking around in woods. Can you really control a habit given the context? Because contextual cues play an important role in triggering the habit. See, I am walking with my camera and the context is very nice. I could just click on pictures, but I'm not doing that. Because I decided that I would shoot a video and I would not take pictures till the video is finished, in order to do justice to the video. Although I feel tempted to take a picture here and there, maybe while walking back I would do so. So that's control. Whenever the environment and the cues are there, you need to control your actions, even if they are habitual, even if you are triggered to do it. And that's the ultimate question for cognitive neuroscience or cognitive science, that how do we achieve this control when we are almost triggered to execute the action. And we still have no answers for it. There are researchers that say the frontal areas of the brain or that area, they play a role, but that's ridiculous. We still don't know how really to train someone, how to tell somebody that this is possible. So choosing between two actions And focusing on one at a time and then moving on to other flexibly is important, even if both are habits. That flexibility is the key, and this is the point I am trying to bring home on this episode. I'm not really pontificating on good and bad habits. It's up to you. I'm just trying to understand, can a good habit become difficult to handle, insensitive, and so much so that you cannot shift between actions? You become a slave to a habit. And cognitive flexibility is the concept that kind of clarifies that cloud. We are perfectly capable of handling our habits and doing whenever we need them. We are not slaves to them. In all actions, this is not just for photographing or walking or talking or putting stuff on Facebook. All kinds of actions. So ultimately, to me, if I really have to advise somebody on habit, I will not focus on what habits you should pick. You can then do anything you like, and that should be your aim. That's why you are trying to make it a habit. You want to be a master, but then learn the control to stop and shift and switch whenever it is important. Otherwise, you would remain a slave to your habits, and that is ridiculous. And that would not allow you to basically learn anything new even. So the cognitive flexibility by attention control is important in not just learning of habits, in maintenance of habits. If you walk here, you won't feel like going home. The crowded world and this world is divided by a thin boundary, just like good and bad habits. How much of attention you need to get something into a habit? I think you need a lot of attention initially till all the components of the actions are in place, and you don't need so much after it has become habitual, because that attention will be used for something new. Something new or learning something more technical on that particular habit. You can always improvise, like in photography, like in writing, like in singing, public speaking, running, swimming. Some things are habitual, but you can always improvise on the parts. So therefore, creativity and sensitivity are never lost. So you can bring in some attention to learn and add something new to that part and move on, so that the whole sequence becomes far more energetic than what it was before. Therefore, you don't, that's exactly the motivation thing. That's precisely it. How do you get motivated? You get motivated by working on improvising on the parts. Because working on the whole is nonsense. That would take you like 500 years. So you need to focus on the parts that need improvisation and learn it by whatever means, and bring that into, and that will eventually become habitual. So when all the parts become, with regular improvising, they're becoming better and better and better, the overall stuff becomes better. So you do all parts of a certain thing very well, and that's quite possible. Therefore, learning of habit need not be a mysterious talking point. It can be broken down to sequence of actions that you can focus and develop, and then improvise on those sequences later. The other point about transfer of habits, is it possible that if you become very good in one, will that skill be transferred to something else? I think it's quite possible. But then they must be related. If you are a good swimmer, you just can't be a good novelist, and vice versa. You can like one other skill, but you just can't be, an expert. It's rare. I'm not saying it's impossible, it's rare. And you end up wasting a lot of time even if you want to do that. So skill transferable probably is easy between similar skills, like playing hockey and playing cricket, maybe to some extent. But they never try this out because they know that it's not very easy. So I would say improvising and becoming better in one of the skills and becoming a master is a good idea than jumping from skill to skill. And there are many people who keep doing that, and they don't find motivation in any one of this, just because nowhere the attention sticks. And this is the point I was trying to talk about last episode. So skill transfer is perfectly fine, but I think that you better master one of these and see where it leads you. And if you become fully insensitive, you lose all sensitivity, then it's another case. But I think that's not the case. Now, I have been doing certain things for 25, 30 years. Every single day maybe, but I am not feeling insensitive to any one of this, because I find new ways or new interpretations, new knowledge associated with them, and then bring them back. And then when you improvise, certain aspects of the old things, they have to be deleted. They just have to go. So replacing is very important of old non-functional things. Just like update your computer software, or you buy a new version of an iPad or iPhone. The difference is there. Because when you buy a new iPhone, you must know why you are buying it, because of certain extra features. So you need to keep on adding extra features to old habits, rather than jumping from one to another. 5 days here, 10 days there, and wasting all your life eventually in that trial and error. That's no good. Okay, I had an intention of making it a short video. I don't know when I add up and edit how long it will become. So this is all I wanted to say on habits. I am trying to write something on it, and probably I would give a more formal lecture some other day. And watch out the cock talks that we keep doing, again, following the websites, and send your comments or whatever you would like to know more. I'd be very happy to engage. And that's it for now. And I'm looking forward to some more unlocking, so that I kind of return back to whatever was normalcy before. Although, in regular work days, I have been in this university for so many years, but I never really walked in this road on a given regular work day. Well, I was mostly occupied in the department, which is about 1 kilometer from here. All right, so do well, and all the best for taking your time to hear me, and subscribe if you like. Both good or bad comments are equally important. And don't subscribe if you don't like. Move on, like I move on. I don't care whether, I don't feel obliged to subscribe to something if I really don't care about it. But there is no such thing. Move on. Thank you.